30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of Face to Face. Face to Face is one of two different programs that I have the pleasure of hosting and producing live every single week at AccessTV.org studio. Face to Face is a show that's designed to ask the guests the hard questions and give you the viewers the answers and information that you deserve to know. This morning on the Face to Face talk show, we have an individual who could be classified as a high profile individual, particularly under 40. He is a mover and shaker, comes from somewhat of a strong political family background, and he has a big responsibility and a task of being a CEO of a town in Connecticut. The guest this morning on the Face to Face talk show is no other than the mayor of East Hartford, Connecticut, Connor Martin. Good morning, Connor. How are you doing?
Morning, Jonathan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Okay. Connor, could you let people know a little bit about yourself briefly before we get into our main topics of discussion?
Yep. Yeah. Like you said, my name's Connor Martin, mayor for the town of East Hartford. I was elected in November of 2023. So I'm in my first term as mayor, already up for re-election November 2025. Before my journey as mayor, I was the chief of staff under Mayor Walsh. And before that, I had served a term on the East Hartford Town Council as a Democrat. Within that time, I also worked at Goodwin University here in town as one of their directors of facilities maintenance and event planning. So I also have my education from good leadership. So it's my pleasure to be here. I've always wanted to be the mayor, as I mentioned to you, Jonathan. Finally got the opportunity to do so, and working to move East Hartford forward.
Okay, Mayor Connor Martin, excellent introduction. The people here of late throughout the past 5, maybe longer than 5 years, have been hearing that East Hartford has major plans. It wants to do a lot of development. It wants to actually make a transition from a different type of town to moving into, I'll let you explain it, but basically the vision for East Hartford is designed to look a lot differently than it has been up until this point. There's many major proposals, projects that's on the, I guess, drawing board. But exactly, let's start off with first the Port East Side development project. Could you kind of let people know exactly what the Port East Side project is and what it's designed to do and look like?
Yeah, so I think before I talk about the Port East Side project, you make a really good point in that the town of East Hartford has heard about big plans in the past and now over and over again. And it's a much different time, as I always say, because the town is going from doing one project at a time to doing multiple simultaneously, which we have today. And the problem with that is that a lot of those projects back then didn't come to fruition. I mean, some even got just as close as a groundbreaking and never came to fruition. You talk about the casino we were supposed to have here, the outlets on Rensselaer Field. In a way, East Hartford's almost been burned. And so it's almost, right now is a very different time for East Hartford where we have almost 13 revitalization projects moving together simultaneously. And as you had mentioned, the Port East Side project is probably one of those main transformative projects that's really going to do something not just for East Hartford, but for the region along the Connecticut River. And so this Port East Side project, which is extremely exciting, is going to take place along the banks of the Connecticut River, kind of between East River Drive and the Founders Bridge, I guess we could call it. And it's going to consist of a mixed-use development of commercial, retail, restaurants, housing, event space. And it is going to truly transform our riverfront, which right now currently sits as empty parking lot space, empty office buildings. We have our levee, which, although protects us from flooding, almost disconnects us from our riverbank and makes access to that riverbank a little bit challenging. And so the vision along the riverfront is one that I think has been a long time coming for East Hartford. I think a number of proposals over the decades have been talked about at the riverfront, and nothing has yet come to fruition. What I would think and what I would say is very different about today is that we have developers and investors who have now secured almost $22 million worth of property along our riverfront. That is one of the single most biggest investments East Hartford's had in a very, very long time. And I think that speaks to the momentum, the energy, and the attention that East Hartford has on itself, because we are doing so much and we're trying to position ourselves as a much more business and developer friendly community. And like I said, we're trying to make sure that we do more than one project at a time, because with the nature of economic development, you never really know if projects are going to make it. You continue to try to usher them forward, work with your developers, try to make the math work, I guess you could say. But if a project fails, what else do we have to show for ourselves? And so, fast forward today, 2025, if one of these projects fail, at least we got 12 others that continue to move along. But we're going to continue to do everything we can to make sure that they don't fail. So, with Port East Side, like I said, this is a mixed-use development that it's been reported to be upwards of $840 million development when all said and done. This is likely a decades-long project. Like I said, it's not a project that's going to come to fruition tomorrow. The first phase with this project is to demo 99 Founders Plaza, which is the old Bank of America headquarters, to make way for 300 plus units of market rate housing. In addition to that, the 111 Founders Plaza building, which is the high rise, kind of the rectangular high rise. It's one of the largest buildings in New England that is unsprinklered. So the building does have to be sprinklered. And that building is slated to be converted into residential, with amenities kind of being on the top floor. So, like I said, those are kind of the first two phases of development within Founders Plaza. But the project itself, like I said, contemplates acres of commercial, other housing development, green space, recreation, green space. We're looking at a potential green walkway that sits on top of our levee and would be flush with the development to help gain access back to that natural amenity that we have, being the Connecticut River. And so, as I said, this development is going to be transformative from East Hartford. It's going to take us from this blue-collar working-class town built up by Pratt and Whitney to a true destination of the area. And I think that's important because residents should know what my vision is for the area and for East Hartford. And it is always my opinion that East Hartford deserves the absolute best. We don't need to limit ourselves because we think we're poor. We think we can't afford things. We think these aren't things we like. When I know these are the things we go to other communities for, and we get to enjoy them there, and we spend our money there. We need to make sure we build those things here in East Hartford as well, because not only will it be supported by East Hartford, but people will come to East Hartford to support what we're looking to build along our riverfront, which is to make it a true destination in a transformative area of the region. One thing East Hartford's always called is that we're the crossroads to New England, right? We're equidistant to New York and Boston. And that's great, but I actually think that's almost a backhanded slap. Instead of being equal distance to any one of those great cities, why don't we become the destination that you stop at on your way to any one of those great cities? What if the capital region, Hartford, East Hartford, became the true destination of Connecticut, that Connecticut became known for? I think we deserve that. I think we have potential for that. I think there's energy and momentum around that. And I think the Port East Side project helps to bring that vision to fruition by redeveloping a riverfront that has sat vacant and dilapidated for decades, for as long as I've, amongst all the other projects that we have. And I also, like I said, I think what's more important than anything is that we have developers and investors who have now invested millions of dollars in East Hartford that hasn't been done in a very long time. And I think, like I said, we want to make sure from our residents, so keeping them informed every step of the way. You know, something I'd also like to make you aware of, Jonathan, is we are exploring a incremental financing district at Port East Side as well. And so we're calling it the Infrastructure Improvement District because that's exactly what it is. It's a financing mechanism to support the infrastructure improvements of the project. In other words, it's called a TIF district, which is tax incremental financing. These are common in Connecticut. There's one down in Stamford at Harbor Point, which has been the single most mechanism and driver to revitalize Harbor Point down in Stamford. Bridgeport has one, Windsor has one, and we would be the fourth if we had one. And so what that does is it's a financing mechanism that creates a district. The district is made up of the owners within the property. So someone that's not an owner would not have to abide by these rules. They would not have to abide by anything that come out of the district. The district itself would have to establish a 5-member board. The town would have a seat on that board so that we can have direct oversight over what the district is doing. The legislation also clearly maps out what the district has the ability to do and what they don't have the ability to do. The district does have to abide by all state, local health, building, and fire codes, as well as local zoning. But the benefit of it is that the town will always continue to get the base amount of taxes that the district generates right now. What the TIF district does is it takes the new taxes and it divides it up, right? It takes a ratio of it, and this ratio would have to be approved by the town council at an open public meeting. It takes a portion of the new taxes, sends it to the town, which represents new tax revenue, something we're always in favor of, and then sends a portion of that tax revenue back into the district to support the infrastructure improvements. So the taxes that go back into the district do not support the vertical housing, do not support the commercial, the retail. It supports all of the public infrastructure that supports the development, and that would include things like your roads, utilities, bridges, parking lots, parking garages, EV charging stations, things that, like I said, would accommodate the public to support the development. So for us, we're extremely excited for the Port East Side project. But as I mentioned, this is a very, very long-term project. I'm not sure I'll actually be the mayor by the time this project comes to fruition, but this is one that's truly going to transform East Hartford to a true destination of Connecticut.
Well, Mayor Martin, and I don't want to spend too much longer talking about the Port East Side. I do have a lot of other questions I do want to ask you. So I would appreciate if you could abbreviate yourself a little bit towards one question. I don't like to interrupt the guests when they're talking, so I tried to hold off. But back to the Port East Side project. Has anything technically started towards any of the demolition work that you mentioned towards tearing down certain buildings? And if not the case, when will the actual construction start towards the first phase of the Port East Side project?
Yeah, no, great question. So we have just conducted our environmental testing inside the building. A fence is actually up around the property. We are hoping to advertise that bid for demolition June 17th. That is the tentative date that we have, with construction, or I'll say demolition, starting in August, with the hopes to have the building down by the end of December, if not the beginning of January. So that's the tentative demolition schedule that we have for 99 Founders Plaza.
And then once that demolition gets started, how long will it take before the project gets completely demolated? And then when will the next starting point of actual construction take place inside the building?
Yeah, so per the development agreement that the developers entered into with the town council, they have 4 years from when that agreement went into effect, which was March of 2024, it's March of 2024. They had 4 years from when that went into effect to pull a building permit. So they have 4 years from March 2024 to pull a building permit. And then I believe there's no timeline on when the apartments have to get built, but obviously it's in the best interest of the developer, instead of sitting on vacant land, to build it as soon as possible and then occupy it. And then after that construction starts where 99 Founders was, we believe the next phase, and this is all still being mapped out as we kind of map out master planning concurrent to demolition, would be the renovation of 111 Founders Plaza into residential. That I don't have a timeline out. As I mentioned, that building has to get sprinklered before anything else. But within the next 2 years, it's demolition of 99 Founders Plaza and the starting of building the market rate apartments where 99 Founders Plaza would have stood.
Okay, when you're talking about development and transforming East Hartford into a destination, that's a big goal when you say that, because a destination I picture is when people plan their trips or plan their scheduling and everything to go to a particular place and spend a day, weekend, or week. And right now, I mean, it would be fair to say that East Hartford is not a true destination. It's not a place that someone would spend the weekend towards, like you would go to Boston or New York. Now, when you say you want to transform or be part of having the greater Hartford region or the capital region, East Hartford, as the focal point of a destination, would you say you need some things that's really going to stand out that somebody could look at from the outside and saying it's something unique about this particular place that I can't really see no other particular place? Or to be perfectly honest, is this just wishful thinking, dreaming, hoping that something can be a destination if everything falls into place?
Well, I think everything's got to start with a vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially from our elected leaders of the region. I think there's a lot of political capital that's needed to bring a vision like this to fruition, right? Why can't we be a Boston or a New York City? We have to build it, in my opinion, because as you mentioned, John, then we don't have it right now. And as we build out Port East Side, and as Hartford continues the development of downtown Hartford, we can be that one day. You look at Boston, you look at New York City, you look at Rochester, New York, you look at any of these major municipalities that sit along a riverfront. They have leveraged that riverfront to create a destination that they become known for. Just like you said, they've been able to leverage it and bring housing, to bring retail, to bring commercial development, to bring that one-stop shop of getting your entertainment, your restaurants. We have to create that experience and build that experience. But this has to start with a vision. And I think that's what this region has possibly suffered from, was a lack of vision and a lack of desire to think high level like that, to take risk, right? To imagine what we could be versus focusing on what we aren't right now, or even what we are right now, which, as you mentioned, is not a destination. But when you have potential, you have momentum, you have political capital, someone needs to start thinking about what can this region really be instead of what we're not. And so for me, maybe a lot of it is wishful thinking, but it's a vision. And it's a vision that's actually being worked, that you can actually touch, you can feel, and you can actually see. And you'll start to see that with the demolition of 99 Founders Plaza. And I just think it needs to take continued effort to work that vision to bring it to fruition. But I don't think it's out of the reach for this region. I think we have to dream big. I think that's what this region's might have lacked for a while, and not just focused on what can East Hartford do, what can Hartford do. You know, we all worry about ourselves. How do we work together to bring this vision to fruition? So I think it's a both dreaming. And I think it has to start there. We got a really solid vision, but we also have tangible things that are going to be happening that will help bring this vision to fruition, and actually make it real for people.
Well, Mayor Martin, when you're talking about bringing in luxury housing, whether
Yes,
it's
sir.
apartments or condos, you're talking about a different earning capital that you're trying to attract in the region. I don't know if these people that are going to be able to afford luxury housing already lives in East Hartford, or lives, with the desire to move into East Hartford very quickly once the housing gets done. Luxury housing could be what, $2,000-$3,000 a month for rent. Where are these people going to come from that you would like to attract towards being able to own or rent these type of
Yeah.
luxury housing that's being proposed and planned for East Hartford?
Yeah, so I appreciate the word luxury, right? However, nobody in the town of East Hartford, at least from my office, has said that we're building luxury housing. What we're bringing in is market rate housing,
Okay.
and so it's rents that are aligned with the market. But some of that may also have a mix in of workforce housing or affordable. But I don't like to say affordable because of the negative stigma that comes out with it. And we automatically think that affordable means poor, it means less quality. And I don't think that's fair to the people who don't classify themselves as that. And so, really, what we're trying to push is owner occupied. We want to create generational wealth. We want to create first time home ownership, whether that's in a condo, whether it's in a modular home, a single family home. And then, like I said, we're building market rate apartments too. What I think is beautiful about East Hartford is that we're building housing for all types of residents. And so you may hear about market rate of housing on this site, but we also talk about how our East Hartford Housing Authority just built up one of their oldest housing authority sites for our lowest income and most vulnerable residents. And so this area does focus on that. But I think too many times we do just that. We put East Hartford in a box, and that's untouchable for us. Our residents can't afford that. Our residents don't make enough. That's exclusive to some other community. And I don't really share into that at all because I know my residents. I've spoke with them enough. I know that we're not a rich community. We're not Glastonbury. We're not South Windsor. And we're not even Manchester. We're East Hartford. And so East Hartford has what East Hartford has. We have a higher medium average income than Hartford does in some of the other communities. But right, we're not Glastonbury. But it doesn't mean we have to limit ourselves. And this is where I go back to we can't only do things that we think East Hartford can support or not support. But it's the same reason like we go to other communities to shop. We go to other communities to live. We do that because they're able to support more than just their own residents. And so this will not be exclusive to someone outside of East Hartford. This is going to be for East Hartford residents. There are East Hartford residents, young professionals who can afford these rents, who can afford these places, who I think are going to want to live here. And it's because of the proximity to Hartford, to the major highways. It's that building that work, live, play experience, that one-stop shop, everything under your roof. We see that with the younger generation, and our population is actually trending significantly younger, where they're looking more for that convenience, everything within the same area. So, I hear you loud and clear, but I think that's a mindset I'm trying to break through with East Hartford is that we don't deserve that because we think we're poor or because we think we don't make enough and that's untouchable to us. I don't share in that, and I probably never will. And the goal is not to gentrify this area where, right, it becomes something different than what East Hartford is. East Hartford is the second most diverse town in the state of Connecticut, and we're going to stay that way. It's actually only going to continue to get more diverse with the way that our younger population is coming up through East Hartford. So, this is all about building all types of housing for East Hartford residents. We actually don't have a lot of market rate housing at all in East Hartford. And so maybe that's limiting us to bringing in people with higher income or those who already make a higher income in East Hartford, not being able to stay here because we don't have that housing for them. And said that that's not even our goal. It's how can we build all types of housing for everybody. And that's what I think we're trying to achieve at Port East Side.
Well, also, Mayor Martin, the next phase as a part of these developments would be the showcase cinema. How close are we towards seeing any type of
Yep.
development at that particular facility?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. This project has now gone through three different administrations. It is my desire to have this project finished with my administration as well. We're looking to close on the property by the end of this month, April. That is the timeline that we have heard from the developer and that we have agreed to. This project has definitely been experiencing a few delays over the past couple of years. With the latest delay being us actually removing $10 million in public infrastructure money that we were going to give to the developer. We're having CRDA operate that infrastructure money for us. That was just a way to better protect our investment. Say the project did fail, we would then own that infrastructure in the ground, which would then allow us to push a better developable site to a new developer. But I'll be honest with you, the project's about 98% there. They've been working very well with MDC and Eversource on getting encroachments for utilities. CRDA has been working well with them on the engineering plans for the infrastructure, which we hope to start this year as well. And so our big focus right now is just closing on the property, which then puts the property in the hands of the developer. And as I mentioned, we hope to do that before the end of this month.
Mayor Martin, I don't have no easy answers, but sometimes you look at other places throughout the country and you see huge mixed-use development projects. Sometimes that Connecticut seems to just be lacking for whatever reason. I think one of the bigger problems that Connecticut has as a small state. We just don't have enough. Well, I don't say you don't have enough, or maybe you can't just utilize the amount of land space that other big states like Texas and Georgia could do. So we're just not a big state physically. But at the same
Yeah.
time, when you've been hearing proposals, like you mentioned earlier during the beginning of the show, there was supposed to be some plans around Rensselaer Field. It never really came through.
Right.
The stadium is still there, but certainly it's not the New England Patriots. I don't want to downplay UConn football, but sometimes you have to
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
yourself up until this point. Why hasn't certain things really existed and been created? And even when Mayor Walsh was on this program a couple of years ago, Morning Talk Live with Jay Stan on McCauley, a talk show, he said for 50 years, basically, that Founders Plaza, East River Drive, the old Bank of America building just really sat there and nothing really came to be for whatever particular reason. You say you want to have the vision, and that's a starting point, and to go along with dreaming and really saying that you believe something can happen. But are you really confident all across the board that the things that you would like to be able to do really is moving in the right direction, that people that you could show people and say these are some examples that I have been able to be part of? Or is it still that dreaming stages that we try to kind of dream first and then develop second?
Yeah, so I think you dream and develop at the same time, right? Because you got to work your dream, you got to work your vision, and I think what we've been able to show is that none of the projects we have started yet have failed, and that's probably the most important point. We continue to usher them along, which I think shows progress. And maybe, like I said, it's the project's not done yesterday, it's not done tomorrow, but we continue to inch toward at least getting a shovel in the ground and getting to completion. What Mike probably alluded to, and I think Jonathan, you're spot on, is East Hartford is incredibly great at starting projects, but we're not so great in finishing them. And that's why projects like the Showcase Cinema that has gone through three different administrations now, I have such an extreme desire to finish it and to continue to work with the developer and get us to the closing and work over those obstacles. And that's how you work the vision and you work the plan, right? Versus just saying, "Hey, I want this area to be developed, or I want my riverfront to be developed, and I hope we're going to be this beautiful destination." No, no, no. That needs to be there, right? That vision needs to be there. But then, how do we work with those developers to make that happen? How do we secure public, state, federal funding to push that project forward? How do we get our approvals through the town council? And so, one thing you'll see in East Hartford this year is going to be the land of demolition, because in order to build new, we have to do without the old. We have to tear it down and we have to build back new. And so you have a couple projects that are already actually demoed at this point to make way for new development. If that demolition didn't happen, I wouldn't have faith in the development either. And of course, you get into the, well, how long is this site going to sit, demoed? And those are just comments and things you have to work through, but we have to start somewhere, right? And we've started somewhere. None of the projects we have started, which I said we have about 13 of them, have failed. All continue to inch along, some faster than others in different days. And so I agree with you. Vision is extremely important, especially at my level. But then making sure that the organization, I mean town hall, is working that vision is a whole nother thing. And I think we have tangible results to show that we continue to work this vision, we continue to move these projects along. Like I said, maybe not as fast as some people would like, but sometimes it's just the nature of economic development. But we had to start somewhere and we have to try. And that's what I think is the big difference from today to where East Hartford stood maybe 50 years ago.
Well, are you looking to see anything similar to what you see with Blueback Square in West Hartford duplicated in East Hartford?
So I don't know. I want something that's unique to East Hartford, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be a Blueback Square. We don't have to be, Somerset Square or any of that. We can be something else, but here in East Hartford. But why do we go to Blueback Square, right? We go there for the shops, we go there for the dining, we go there for the experience. And so we're looking to create that same experience here in East Hartford so that you don't have to go to other towns to do that. One of the most beautiful things I heard from my residents when I was door knocking and when I was campaigning is that they want to spend their money here in East Hartford. Heard you loud and clear. I have to hear them. I have to now take that feedback and I have to build it here. I mean, what's better than your own residents wanting to spend their money here in their community? So where they go to those other communities for the experience, all we're looking to do is how do we build that same experience here in East Hartford so you can spend your money here as well.
Well, when you say money now, if you develop something in East Hartford, do you want to have things that, let's say, the average dinner, if you're going to build a upscale, I'm saying the word upscale, you don't have to say that. If you want to
Sure.
build an
Yeah, yeah.
upscale restaurant where you have to spend $100 for a couple of two, or would you want to have things that you could spend $25 to $30 for a couple of two, or do you want both to be working simultaneously?
I want both. I want options. I want options for our residents. Whether you want a quick meal, fast food, or you want somewhere to take your spouse out nice and you want to spend a little bit of money. I don't want us to be limited by what we think we should have or what we can't afford.
Mhm.
Let's just create options and let's let our residents decide for themselves what they want.
Okay. Now, currently, do you want to see the image of East Hartford change from a blue collar type of town where people think the first thing of East Hartford, they think of Pratt and Whitney, or do you have no problem having that image of a blue collar town, but just changing some development projects in somewhat of an image of a different diversity, different options to go along with what you already has as the blueprint of East Hartford?
Yeah, so no, it's a great question. And so you might have heard we're going through this rebrand campaign, right? And the rebrand campaign is because I want to know what our identity is here in East Hartford, right? How do we look at ourselves, right? And I'm not doing this rebrand campaign, and it's not Connor's rebrand; it's a town's rebrand, and we've made a significant effort to make sure we get feedback from all of our residents and all the different groups, so we can hear from them what makes East Hartford special or what doesn't. And this is not an effort to erase our history; it's to acknowledge that blue collar, working class town built up by Pratt and Whitney history. But Jonathan, if we're going to be honest about it, East Hartford's not what it was 50 years ago. For the single fact that we're the second most diverse town in the state of Connecticut, we weren't that 50 years ago. Our community was predominantly white, and right now it's equally white, black, and Hispanic. And with that comes cultural differences, comes traditions, comes a difference in restaurants. As I mentioned, our population is also trending much younger. So I believe our median age in East Hartford is 37 or 39 years old. It's only going to continue to get younger. So what this rebrand actually does is it acknowledges where we are today, because where we are today is not where we were 50 years ago. And we're never going to go back. We can never be what we were 50 years ago, for the fact that footprint has changed, where not everybody living in East Hartford now still works at Pratt Whitney. Their footprint, where they've driven some of their business down south or to Middletown, they don't have that same significant footprint that they had here back in the 50s. And so what I'm simply doing with this rebrand is acknowledging where we were, where we are, but I'm asking my residents, where do we want to go in the future, right? Where do we see ourselves going? Because we will very well still be a working class town. We have a lot of that business makeup here. We still have a lot of manufacturing industry here, which I think is a positive for us. The manufacturing industry in itself is changing. It's not the banging hammers and nails now. It's computer, it's technology, it's more education, it's more advanced. And so what I'm trying to do is acknowledge where we are right now and where we're going as a community. And what that comes out to be will be backed by what the residents of East Hartford want to see in that rebrand and where they want to see us going. So I think it could go either way. I think we should be a little bit of both, but we can't be what we used to be because we're simply just not that anymore. And we have to acknowledge that. And that's a positive thing in my opinion. We're headed for better.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Martin, would you ever strongly consider regionalizing Hartford and having one Hartford and East Hartford be part of Hartford? Or do you like the separation of having the different towns and the different diversity throughout the region?
So I don't think there'll ever be enough political capital to combine into one Hartford. No
Okay.
matter if the two mayors got along so well that they both agreed on it, it would just we're 169 towns. We're the land of steady habits. But you know what? We're doing this year, and I thank you for this question because I'm sure it's related to our announcement to explore sharing services with Hartford and other municipalities. Actually, will be likely partnering on a project with Glastonbury, a connectivity project, as well as been in talks with Manchester about any areas that we can work together there. And so regionalization is right, that no word, you don't want to speak in East Hartford, in Connecticut, but it makes sense, right? We're all doing our own thing, we're all duplicating efforts, and we're all spending our own money to do it. And so I always use this statistic, right? In Connecticut, there's 169 towns, yet there's 364 fire departments. And I don't know why there's 364 fire departments in 169 towns. There are some towns that have multiple fire departments. And so if you ask me from a government efficiency standpoint, there's got to be a cheaper way. Every single one of those fire departments have their own fire chief, possibly have their own fire company, their own fire trucks, their own fire equipment. And some of them are smaller than the town of East Hartford, and we only have one fire department. And so for me, there's got to be a better way to do business in Connecticut. There's got to be a way to stop talking about how we can work together and actually start working together. And that's exactly what we're doing with Hartford. And that's exactly what shared services is not. It's not becoming one Hartford. It's not solving one municipality's problems over the other. It's not even combining departments or fire departments or police departments. These are all things that I think rightfully so have been talked about and have been brought up, and people are worried about them. And we continue to try to dispel those worries, and just make people understand what this is. But this is exploring how we can stop talking about working together and actually start working together. And so we are exploring that with Hartford, and we do so to try to build out a framework that can possibly be applied to other municipalities. Sharing services is actually not something new in Connecticut. We used to have county government a very, very long time ago, but we don't anymore, as you know. We now have our COGS, which is like the Capital Regional Council of Government, that almost act as county government for the municipalities within that district. But then you do see shared services with certain smaller towns. These are towns that are predominantly under 30,000, whether they're sharing town inspector and programs, assessors, sharing communication, sharing Board of Education. We've seen that this can happen, and we've seen it be a success in Connecticut already. And so now we're looking, how can two bigger municipalities like Hartford, East Hartford, who are both very busy, who have a lot of projects going on, how can they too explore sharing services to create efficiencies in their budget, lower the cost for taxpayers, as well as to try to work together to address both of our issues and solve both of our problems together. So I think it's something that's worth exploring. I think it makes sense. And, as we move through this with Hartford, we do have a final report that should be coming out hopefully within the next couple of months to look at those areas of potential where we can share services and cut down our costs on our budget. So it's just something that I think Connecticut should continue to look into. One of the only states that don't do it. And it could be a benefit for us.
Well, that's my another question. I mean, that's my second question. I mean, do you look at some
Yep.
things that the capital city is doing that you like to duplicate? And do you see it vice versa? Maybe there's some things in East Hartford that Hartford can look at and duplicate. And do you feel like you're competing with the city of Hartford by being so close together, or you can look at it totally differently, that you're just two separate cities and towns and you have two different ways of operating as a city government?
Yeah, and that's kind of been the beauty of the shared services kind of task force, is that right realization that how each other is doing things, either the same or different, and how we're learning from each other. And I don't have definitive answers for you yet, because that's what's going to come out of the report. But through some of the meetings I've attended and some of the rumblings, there has been a lot of things that Hartford's doing that we're not doing that we should be doing. And because they figured out a more modern way to do it, they don't do it using paper. Like I said, these are just best practices that we're learning from each other that we can take to solve our own issues and make our, move our town forward. I'm never big on reinventing the wheel, because reinventing the wheel takes time. But instead, why not take something that works and tailor it to East Hartford, to what works best for East Hartford? I think there's a lot of logic in taking that route. Like I said, we're both busy. It doesn't mean we both have a lot to learn from each other. We're similar but different. I think Hartford's a capital city at the end of the day, and so we're always somewhat in East Hartford, in Hartford's shadow, because they're just the capital city. They get the lion's share of most things. I mean, they're the capital city. They're also a bigger city. They have a greater need. They have more need because of their population just being bigger than ours. They're pretty diverse, just like we are, but they're just the capital city. So they're a city, we're a town. They're, like I said, double our population. So we're always a little bit in their shadow, and I think the residents of East Hartford might feel that way too. And so that's why, right, we work to find our own identity, what makes us special. What can we bring over to Hartford and tailor it to us? I mean, one thing I probably stole from Hartford is their idea of a Pratt Street, but so is Manchester, and so have other towns. I mean, we simply want to create our own pedestrian plaza, and so why can't we have that here in East Hartford? Why do I have to come up with something brand new when we see a model that works? They shut down a road. We have a perfect road we can shut down, and then we program it to what works for East Hartford, and it's accessible to East Hartford residents. And so that's a perfect example where, yeah, I stole an idea, one that works, and now we have a great pedestrian only venue here in East Hartford that our main street can become known for. And I think it makes a lot of sense to do that. I think the people who see it here in East Hartford absolutely enjoy it, because if we didn't have it, where would they
Mm.
go? They would just go to Hartford. So I think the spirit of this is, what can we learn from each other? What can we take from each other to make both of our municipalities great? And then how can we offer this to both of our residents?
Sounds like almost an excellent way to end this particular segment as we're running out of time. But I do want to ask you one question and kind of get
Yes,
your
sir.
feedback on it. You have Rensselaer Field. It's a stadium. I believe it holds
Yeah.
about 40,000 people. At the
Yeah.
time when the New England Patriots, Robert Kraft, was considering, I guess I could say the word considering more than actually doing, to bring the NFL team and the stadium here to Hartford. And then the delay came along with the steam plant, and then he had a escape clause that if the project wasn't developed at a certain period of time, then he had the right to actually exit. I don't know how all of a sudden Rensselaer Field came into the play, but I don't think there was never no strong belief that East Hartford could be able to duplicate a NFL team. It's almost like I'm trying to ask you, is sometimes people trying to make a city or town something that they're not? And do you feel kind of grounded towards learning from those type of mistakes in the past, that sometimes don't try to aim for something too big that's not really durable, and just try to work within what you're capable of doing? I just want to hear your answer towards this last part of the questions towards the show.
No, no, I think that's a great point. It goes back to the dreaming, right? We have to vet the feasibility of any project, right? And almost every project we conduct has some sort of market study. It's including the town's plan of conservation and development. So does it align with what the region and what East Hartford will support? And I think there's a little bit of risk, right? A risk. This is a use that it's not offered here, but maybe it's something that would be successful. And a number of studies are always conducted to vet out that feasibility. With the stadium being owned by the state of Connecticut, and being there for, I believe, almost 2 decades now, I don't know if that stuff happened in the beginning. But could I answer you to say, does the stadium serve East Hartford in the way that we wish it did? I would probably say no right now, and I would say no because it obviously takes up a massive plot of land right in the center of our town. It's also non-taxable. So, and then on top of that, as you mentioned, the stadium is not programmed year round, and that's probably because it's an open air stadium, and so there's not much you can do about it, especially in the winter months. And as no knock to UConn football. If they don't win, and if they get into this habit of not winning, people aren't going to come out. I did just get word, and this is very exciting, and I believe it'll be promoted. But we do have an A-list celebrity performer who is coming to Rensselaer Field in August, which should bring almost 38,000 people there. And so, as it's one thing to better program the stadium, East Hartford needs to now focus on, when those people come to the stadium, how do we keep them here? I mean, I'm already working with CRDA and talking about ideas on how can I enhance the site of the stadium, whether it's bringing in restaurant, retails, breweries, small boutique shops, so that I can enhance the experience before, during, and after whatever happens at the stadium. But state's got to work with us. They got to program it better. They got to drive foot traffic there. They obviously have slated or put aside some money to renovate a little bit of the locker rooms, the bathrooms, So if they're going to put this money into it, we're going to continue to make investments into what should really be a great asset for East Hartford. It has to be a true partnership between East Hartford, UConn, and the state of Connecticut. And like I said, on our end, it's how do we develop around the stadium to increase that experience? Because like I said, agreeing with you right now, it probably doesn't serve East Hartford in the best way that it could. And so, right, was the feasibility of a stadium there vetted before it was built? I don't know. I would hope to assume so. But maybe it was a risk that was taken that didn't pan out the way they had thought. So, for us now with the stadium acknowledging that it's probably going to continue to be there, how can we enhance the site to make it a true asset that does benefit East Hartford?
Well, Mayor Martin, those are going to have to be your last words. Those words are well taken. I mean, I thought you provided a good, honest presentation this morning on the Face to Face Talk Show. But as I ask every single guest towards the end of the show, if there's any last words or any last things that you would like for people to know about yourself or what you're currently doing, please feel free to express yourself.
Yeah, Jonathan, I appreciate the hard questions and I appreciate you wanting to hear it from me directly. And that's what I would leave with. And I would encourage all residents, whether it's visiting me at the Senior Center monthly, tuning into my Ask the Mayor, which I do bi-weekly, my town updates, town council updates that I do bi-weekly. Engage me, hear from me, ask me the hard questions. If you want to know what's going on in East Hartford, just let me know. I'll give you the good, the bad, the ugly. We got a lot going on for us. We're not a perfect town. We've still got a lot of work to do, but I'm here for it. And if I'm here for it, I hope my residents are too. And, it's a two-way street, local government. So you got to meet us halfway. And, we put out the information. We ask you to try to seek it as best you can. And like I said, where you can't find any other answers, come to me, come to the source. Happy to talk about anything we have going on in town.
Okay, well, definitely keep up the good work with what you're doing. I mean, you seem like you really have a pulse on East Hartford and other areas throughout the region. And I wish you and East Hartford the very best of luck with your upcoming future plans.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I had just enjoyed hosting this edition of the Face to Face Talk Show with the special guest, the mayor of East Hartford, Connor Martin. And I thought he provided honest, direct answers and information towards what he is working towards in the town of East Hartford. And the time will only tell if these plans are going to come towards action and towards a finishing stage. But hopefully for you, the viewers out there, you felt this program was very instrumental in some particular areas. Currently don't have a show put together at this point. I'm looking very hard towards pushing an All About You biographical talk show, but you never know. Anything is possible. But until I see you again, for viewers out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.